So, it's 2025. Congratulations to everyone. We made it through what was an incredibly chaotic year in the amusement park industry. And now that we've crossed the Rainbow Ridge and 2024 is officially behind us, we can stop and reflect on just what 2024 was like in the amusement world. And it was certainly something. Honestly, it was not a great year to be a coaster enthusiast. A number of long, continued delays on some high-profile roller coasters, quality issues, and lots of roller coasters just being straight ripped out of their respective parks with almost no ceremony. The biggest one of those being the former world's tallest and fastest roller coaster, Kingda Ka. In the shadow of all this was what was perhaps the biggest and most defining news story of the year, the blockbuster merger between Cedar Fair and Six Flags, forming the Six Flags megacorporation. All the way back in 2023, which is kind of crazy it's been that long, I made a video about the merger proposal and shared my thoughts and opinions about it, and I wasn't very excited about the prospect of the whole thing. But now it's been long enough and we can finally sit back and consider, was my skepticism actually justified? Yeah, I would say so. Six Flags Corporation absolutely pissed off enthusiasts with their decision making at basically every single turn this year, especially when it came to the vaunted Kingda Ka and its unceremonious destruction. When you do take a step back, most of the decisions that were made by the corporation actually do make sense as business decisions. But why is that the case? Are things going to actually get better for enthusiasts? What more is waiting for us in the future? I have no idea, but I'm going to rant about it nonetheless.
Hey, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, thanks.
Now, for today's XL rant, I decided I would hop on Plan Code 2 and make an Intamin Strata as a bit of a tribute to the late, great Kingda Ka. May it rest in peace. The main goal of this video for me is to kind of give a status report to my previous predictions from the initial video I put out about the merger. Basically, was I right to be skeptical about the merger? What has happened over the past year that has led to the outcry from enthusiasts, and what's going to happen next? So let's jump right into it. In my previous video, I basically argued that it would be a bad thing for the amusement industry, and I had a couple reasons for this. The first one is that these two companies basically operate in their own segment of the amusement industry. Like, yes, there are Disneys, you have your Universals, you have your Silver Dollar Cities and Dollywoods, but these kind of take up separate sections of the market, a little more upscale, as so to say. Basically, the only competition in the segment of the market that Six Flags and Cedar Fair were occupying were themselves. And so now that they're together, they form a functional monopoly, and that almost never goes well. Without the competition anymore, there's not much of an incentive for the corporation to really take risks and push the envelope like the two had in the past, because there's no one they're competing against. As a result, I expected to see ride closures, I expected to see park closures, and just general less motivation to push the envelope with future attractions. Like, I don't think we're going to be seeing as many gigas as we would had the two remained separate. Now, it is still too early to say that the latter two are necessarily true, but the ride closure thing is definitely true, and I'm sure you're all very well aware of that. In fact, I would argue that to be an enthusiast at least, it's been a pretty bad year for the Cedar Flags Corporation. There were a significant number of delays and a number of notable attractions. The Top Thrill 2 fiasco almost feels like it was a decade ago, and that was probably mostly a pre-merger casualty, but Cedar Fair's decision to sell out an unprecedented attraction to the unproven lowest bidder was not a good sign of the future culture that Cedar Flags was going to inherit. For myself, I can say I've been staring at the pretty much completed Flash for what feels like months at this point. It's been a pretty bad year for Six Flags Great Adventure. What was supposed to be their 50th anniversary and a huge celebration has just turned into one of the worst years for the park in a long time. Then you have other smaller stories like Six Flags Mexico getting their tilt coaster basically ripped out from underneath them because Cedar Point needed a little bit of a PR push after the whole Top Thrill 2 fiasco. But the main thing that had enthusiasts up in arms was the chain just ripping out a number of major coasters with absolutely no warning. Nighthawk, La Vivora, Green Lantern, Anaconda, and the biggest casualty of them all, Kingda Ka. Everyone was furious about Kingda Ka, and the spate of attraction closures around Kingda Ka has just rendered enthusiasts even more and more angry about the whole situation. A lot of people are saying, well, if you're going to take out the rides, at least give enthusiasts the opportunity to give them a proper goodbye, and there was no more notable an example of that than Kingda Ka, which basically had its own homegrown goodbye party after the park continuously and vehemently denied that they were going to rip it out. But let's just jump into it and talk about the ride closures, huh? We'll start with La Bivora. This is probably the least surprising removal after the removal of Great Escape's bobsled last year. I wouldn't say the attraction was very fondly remembered. A lot of people had not great opinions about the thing, but it was still the last ride of its kind, and it is sad to lose a piece of roller coaster history. That said, I don't think that people were too mad about this one compared to some of the other attractions. I think people were a little bit more upset about Nighthawk, and also the Drop Tower, which is closing along with it. Nighthawk was certainly a controversial attraction that many liked, but more hated. But again, it was a piece of roller coaster history, the first modern flying coaster, the first Vekoma Flying Dutchman that is just going out to pasture. Supposedly, it's being replaced by a family coaster, but I don't know how much of the footprint of Nighthawk is actually going to be taken up by that ride. Probably not going to be that much. Maybe this closure will help prop up Batwing over the next few years, and I really selfishly want that because Batwing is a great attraction. I really hope that will be the case, but honestly, I doubt it. I wouldn't be surprised to see Batwing on its last legs in the near future. Then we have the big doozy, which is the removal of Green Lantern. Honestly, a great thing, big positive, and most notably, Kingda Ka. I don't need to litigate this one too much. We all very much remember the absolutely horrendous PR disaster that was Kingda Ka's final days. Rumors being reported by a couple of high-profile content creators, the park basically denying those rumors, enthusiasts getting up into a tizzy, freaking out about the ride potentially closing, freaking out that the ride wasn't actually getting any news about the closures, freaking out that the content creators kept pushing that it was going to close despite the total lack of evidence. Everybody was mad at each other, people were showing up and freaking out at the ride. What a mess. Especially since Great Adventure is my home park and I got to witness the whole disaster unfold in front of my own eyes. That said, it was almost inspiring to see enthusiasts come together and give Kingda Ka the send-off it truly deserved. The last day of Kingda Ka's operation was honestly a truly special one. It had this sort of energy that I haven't felt about Kingda Ka basically since its opening. But still, this was a tragic loss, and it was a tragic loss not just for enthusiasts, but for the general public. The GP loved this damn thing, and I saw plenty of people who were just Great Adventure regulars who didn't follow roller coaster news furious at the announcement of this famous and record-breaking attraction finally biting the dust without any sort of fanfare. And now we have the latest victim of this culling, which is Anaconda. And a lot of people aren't very sad about this, but I was shocked to see just how angry people were at the removal of this arrow looper. Now, I can't deny my bias. I've been a day one Anaconda supporter. I love the ride. I still think to its dying day that it was the best arrow looper in Virginia. But a lot of people had very negative opinions about this ride, which is why I was surprised to see just how many people were angry at Six Flags about its removal. Now, I've heard some rumors from people saying that there were issues with the structure which have led to its closure, but I mean, that didn't stop Kings Island from giving Vortex a proper send-off, so I'm not gonna let them use that as an excuse. I'm honestly equal parts sad and mad about the whole thing, and I really wish that I could have given Anaconda the send-off I wanted to give it, because it held a significant place in kind of my journey as a Thuzy. Years fighting on Facebook forums defending Anaconda has basically led me to the place that I am right now, so shout out to Anaconda. Thank you for making me the Thuzy that I am today. It's mostly concerning that Anaconda is going down because the previous attractions we discussed all kind of have maintenance issues and were famous for their reliability and upkeep. But arrow loopers, despite their age, are generally unproblematic attractions, and they have pretty cheap maintenance costs. So is that going to be stopping Cedar Flags from ripping them out? Who knows? I keep hearing rumors about Carolina Cyclone, that one might be next. It does suck that these rides aren't getting the proper goodbyes they rightly deserve, but these abrupt closures do kinda sorta make sense from a business perspective. Like, with the notable exception of Ka, most of these rides were mainly Enthusi favorites that weren't necessarily a big hit with the GP. Enthusiasts do make up a small percentage of the park going public. Removing them quickly did lead to a huge PR backlash in the enthusiast community that is still ongoing, but it probably actually is better in a PR sense for the GP, because the GP isn't really paying attention to this. Like, for example, take Kingda Ka. If Six Flags made this big announcement, started printing out merch, and had this big publicized closing date for Kingda Ka, the people who normally go to the park but don't pay attention to Enthusi news, who do love Kingda Ka, would have probably gotten really mad about it, and that would have probably affected the PR reputation and the sales of the park going forward. Like, maybe they wouldn't come back next year now they know that Ka's gone. But if you just rip off the band-aid quick and make no note of it, the person who just goes to the park once every year isn't going to notice that Kingda Ka's gone. Hell, the GP was so angry about Ka being taken out just from, like, online reactions that I can almost be assured that an actual final campaign would have made the PR backlash for the GP much worse. And any money made on the final ride trips and merch that a sort of ceremony would have gotten would be a little blip in the grand scheme of things. Can't lie, these removals will significantly reduce the operating costs for these parks, especially for maintenance hogs like Nighthawk and Ka. And like, just looking at the books, this makes sense as a business decision. The money required to maintain these retractions does not really justify their continued operation. Even Ka, which faced supposed fierce opposition from the park and the park employees towards its removal, was a huge money sink for Great Adventure, and despite its popularity, the accountants probably see that they're going to make more money by closing it than they would by keeping it around. The real concern about these closures is that what's coming next is so nebulous. We know that Vlavivora is being replaced for a dive, but that's really the only one we know concretely. Nighthawk and the Drop Tower at Carowinds are being removed for a family launch coaster, but we don't know how much of the plot is actually going to be used by that ride, or what that sort of ride will entail. Absolutely nothing is planned for Anaconda's replacement, and KD is literally getting a coaster this year in Rapterra, so I would expect that literally nothing is going to be coming for that gorgeous lakeside plot for years to come. And this supposed record-breaking launch coaster that's coming for Ka is still completely up in the air. We have no idea what it's going to be, and if those leaks about a supposed shuttle coaster spinner are true, that'll be a very piss-poor replacement for two major roller coasters. All these replacements are coming in 2026 at the earliest, and let's be real, they're probably going to be delayed even further, so I'd expect even 2027, 2028 before we start seeing the replacements for these ride removals. I just don't have a real good feeling about what these ride removals mean for the future of the Six Flags Corporation. Basically, the monopoly is showing its colors already, and I don't think things are necessarily going to get better. I believe that the future investments are going to be scaled back. Like, yes, this record-breaking launch coaster that's supposedly coming, I don't think it's going to match the ambition of Kingda Ka, which was still one of the most ambitious roller coasters in the world, almost 20 years after its original opening. There's no reason for them to continue to shoot for the moon. There's no competition. Universal and Disney aren't going to be pushing for these records. They're not going to be building Gigas. They're not going to be building Stratas. The only roller coaster that's pushing these records is over in Saudi Arabia, and that's like a Six Flags park anyway, so that doesn't affect the bottom line. Park closures and sales are probably next because it's pretty obvious that the new Six Flags Corporation is putting money first. And we're already starting to see signs with it, with CGA getting its hours pretty significantly cut for next year. Uh-oh. Basically, to conclude, from a business angle, this does make sense, but I'm seeing exactly what I expected here, which is the short-sighted push for corporate profits in the short term. I understand why they're doing this. They want to get rid of some of these rides, and they want to get a little more cash flow, but I do think it'll hurt things long term, just not as much as some people think. I do think there is still a legitimate public outcry over Ka, and I do think that will negatively affect attendance numbers for Six Flags Great Adventure in the near future. But what we can gather from what's happened already is that the accountants are in the driver's seat, and I expect that to continue into the near future. Unfortunately, we have many examples of companies post-acquisition putting profits over product and things ending rather badly. I know I hammered this sort of thing last time, but the Boeing acquisition of McDonnell Douglas is basically the perfect encapsulation of this process, because the accountants coming on from McDonnell Douglas has basically directly led to the issues that Boeing is dealing with now. But for now, it's not like I can really do anything about it, or any of us can really do anything about it. Maybe I could vote with my wallet, but I already got my park pass for next year before things started really hitting the fan. The truth is that the new Six Flags parks are really the only game in town, especially for enthusiast coasters, that the sort of rides that I'm looking for. And so there's no reason that Cedar Flags needs to stop the cull. You should get your final rides in soon. I know I'm going to start doing that. I've already added Magic Mountain back to my list for the next year, before they remove two of my favorite coasters in the world, and I should probably add California's Great Adventure as well. So good luck, everyone. I hope to God that these cullings don't continue, and if they do, I hope that they're not your favorite attractions, but I think things are gonna get worse, so buckle up and let's hope that 2025 will maybe be a slightly better year for theme parks than they were in 2024.